news came down late Wednesday night. Harbaugh, he was the unquestioned top candidate during this head coach cycle after the Ravens let him go after 18 seasons with them. He now looks to bring the Giants back to their winning ways. Time now to welcome in CBS Sports NFL writers Will Brinson and John Breach. And John, I'll start with you since we are talking about a John here. Harbaugh had the Ravens as perennial contenders for a huge chunk of his 18 years. But given the fact that the Giants have been at the top of drafts for the last few years, how will you define success for John Harbaugh in New Jersey?
Well, I think that John Harbaugh is a big name. The Giants swung for the fences. So success is going to be eventually winning a Super Bowl. I think that's what you have to do. Now, maybe not in year one, you don't have to win that Super Bowl, but the Giants are paying him big money and they're bringing in a big name because that's the expectation here. They want to get back to earlier this century when they were winning multiple Super Bowls. And so you look at John Harbaugh does, though, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. You look around the NFL just this year at what first-year coaches or new head coaches have done in Chicago, in Jacksonville. So the change of scenery might actually work out in Harbaugh's favor. There's no reason he can't go out and say, win the NFC East in his first year. They have a lot of cornerstone pieces on the roster. You look at their offense, Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo on defense. You have Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence. There are a lot of players to build around. And you have the 5th overall pick. And so now it's John Harbaugh, the guy that kind of has to mold this all together. You saw a Giants team this year. They lost 7 games by 1 score. That's why you bring in a coach like Harbaugh to prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So I don't think an NFC East title would be out of the question in his first year.
Hey, it's not just another John, Chris. It's another John who went to Miami of Ohio. Hey. That's right. John Harbaugh and John Breach sharing an alma mater. Of course, John Harbaugh was there when Breach was just but a wee pup with Jim Breach in Cincinnati chasing Super Bowls. Look, this is a good hire by the Giants, and people will say they overpaid. It sounds like 5 years, $100 million, $20 million is the going rate for a really good football coach. And if you look at the list of Giants head coaches since Tom Coughlin took them to the promised land, you have Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and then Brian Daboll. To me, this is very similar to what the Kansas City Chiefs did when they went out and hired Andy Reid in 2013. And, of course, John Harbaugh, a Andy Reid protege, the special teams coach there in Philadelphia with him before he took the Baltimore job. You go out and you do whatever you have to do to get the best candidate, the guy who is really only a free agent, really only on the market as a head coach because he just was there too long. And now, granted, Kansas City not the same thing as New York, but John Harbaugh is going to come in. He's going to take what has been a floundering franchise the last, close to 10 years. He's going to instill some seriousness in there. It's going to be regimented. It's going to be a lot like Tom Coughlin, honestly. And I think that, depending on what hires he brings in, there's a really good chance like Todd Monken could do some awesome stuff with Jackson Dart. So it's hard to view this as anything other than an A-plus hire for whatever team that went out and got John Harbaugh, and it happened to be the Giants.
Right, at least on paper, because we've never seen them exist as a franchise or exist as a franchise with John Harbaugh as the head coach. But it looks like it should be a hire that is going to lead to more success. Now, for me, I always believed that once Harbaugh made a decision, the rest of the head coaching openings or, different coordinator openings would be cleared up and resolved. So, what's going to be the next domino to fall in your eyes?
Okay, so when I saw this question, I saw what's the next domino that you want, and I'm gonna use this. What do you want to have happen as the leaping off point for producer Lucas to make my pick, and that's Mike McDaniel to the Lions as offensive coordinator. The news. Look, Arthur Smith, great guy, good coach. Squeezed the most out of the lemon with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year in terms of what they had, but. I don't want him in Detroit. I don't want him running the Arthur Smith offense in Detroit. What I want is Mike McDaniel running the Mike McDaniel offense with Jared Goff in Detroit. That's what I want. Let's get Mike McDaniel out of the head coaching cycle, put him into Detroit, get him as the offensive coordinator. Mike McDaniel, Dan Campbell cooking in the lab. Like, I mean, give me all the Walter and Jesse memes you have available.
Hey, I like that. I like that right there. That's a good analogy.
Let's cook, Mike. Let's cook. That's what I want to see.
Well, Brinson, I think that's a great idea, except maybe I'm going to steal Mike McDaniel for my answer. I'm actually not. But the thing I want to see is the Atlanta Falcons hire an offensive-minded head coach, and I'm going to go with Kevin Stefanski. I know that's a little bit bizarre because he struggled in Cleveland during this past season, but he's a two-time NFL Coach of the Year. He's very good with quarterbacks. And you put him in that Falcons offense that has Bijan Robinson, Drake London. Obviously, if you need to develop Michael Penix. So that is why you bring in someone like Stefanski. Maybe Kyle Pitts comes back. Maybe he doesn't. If he does, that's just another weapon to add to the arsenal. And I think you need an offensive-minded coach who can mold that Falcons offense into what every year, you go into your fantasy draft in August, you think the Falcons offense is going to be the one that explodes. It doesn't, or maybe it does in late December by the time your fantasy playoffs are over. They need someone who can get that thing rolling in September in week 1, and I think Stefanski can do that. Yeah,
for me, my next domino is going to fall Mike Tomlin to the Baltimore Ravens. Just kidding. That would be crazy. That ain't happening. Okay, if it does, then me jokingly saying it, let the record show that I did say it. Now, when we go to the Eagles, A.J. Brown's final game of the season ended getting into a shouting match with head coach Nick Sirianni, dropping a critical pass late and leaving without speaking to the media. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about Brown's future in Philadelphia after a rocky season. On Thursday, general manager Howie Roseman said that it's unlikely Brown is not with the Eagles next season.
It is hard to find great players in the NFL, and AJ is a great player. I think from my perspective, that's what we're going out and looking for when we go out here in free agency in the draft, is trying to find great players who love football, and he's that guy. So I think that would be my answer.
We're back here with Will Brinson and John Breach. And John, I'll start with you. Do you think keeping A.J. Brown is the right course of action based on what we saw from this year? He gets another year older, and his production, especially during that playoff game, left a lot to be desired.
I do not think they should keep it. They should look to trade him. But if you look at his contract, it's a little bit difficult. I think there'd be a huge dead cap hit involved, so it's not so easy. And the thing with A.J. Brown, and you look at last year, he was reading books on the sideline. That's a pleasant distraction when your offense is clicking and you go on your way and you win the Super Bowl. Ha, ha, ha. No one really cares. But this year, it seemed like every other week he was out there complaining about something. There seemed to be drama all the time, or he was yelling at Nick Sirianni on the sideline, or yelling at a teammate, or complaining that he wasn't getting the ball. And when the team is struggling, that just adds on to that. It hurts locker room chemistry. The old adage is winning fixes everything. Everything was fixed last year. It wasn't fixed this year. And so it is possible A.J. Brown was just frustrated with the offense, and now that Kevin Patullo has been relieved of his duties, Brown will be happy, and they'll hire someone who will make sure he gets a lot of targets in their offense. But I do think if you can find someone who is willing to pay big for him, why not pull the trigger on that? So I do think that the Eagles should at least listen to offers, even if they don't trade him.
I think the issue here really is the offensive coordinator situation. A.J. Brown had more targets this year than he had last year. Now, it was like mostly up and down. It was unproductive weeks followed by squeaky wheel games. He was really good down the stretch. I mean, he got a bunch of touchdowns, had like several big games. And then, you get in a windy game in Philly in the playoffs. Like, I know we try to say we should ascribe more like value to these playoff games, but we inherently have to, right? To me, this is the pattern of the Eagles: is you have a good offensive coordinator, your offense looks great, the offensive coordinator leaves to get a head coaching job, they hire internally, the offensive coordinator isn't that great, Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie step in, they force a new offensive coordinator from the outside that is better on the Eagles, and then everyone's happy because they're winning. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with the Eagles next year. So to me, you got an SEC guy who with a great pedigree, who's under 30, who makes big plays and is a great player. I don't think Howie Roseman's trading him.
All right, Will Brinson and John Breach cannot wait to see how it unfolds, whether A.J. Brown will be an Eagle for this upcoming season, if he will be wearing a different uniform. Appreciate the insight, guys. So again, we're going to see what changes are coming for Philly this offseason. We already know, as Will alluded to, they'll have a new offensive coordinator. But 1 year after winning it all, Philly saw their season end in the wild card round, and their offensive numbers across the board down.